Hi guys, today it's about Quake II, one of the greatest first-person shooters ever released. Quake II was very well received back in 1997, and its legendary status can be confirmed by later re-releases. First, in 2019, it was the RTX version. This was a NVIDIA backed up job. Here is me on the 6th June 2019 downloading the game as soon as it was available on Steam.
Oh,
Of course, I had to buy an
lovely
RTX
small
card
guy.
first. And what can I say? It looked amazing from the start, and the RTX version received many updates since 2019, so now it looks even better. This is the original release. In 2023, Quake 2 was re-released or remastered. This version it's amazing as well. Let's just take a quick look before going to the original version and how it was meant to be played on 1997 hardware. From now on, we are sticking with the original Quake 2, released in December 1997, just before the big Christmas shopping spree. So what reason would you have not to spend $40 on the best FPS ever released? Because in 1997, there really wasn't anything better. First, let's see how the game looked on a common PCI S3 ViRGE card. This is the updated DX version released in 1997. In the same year, Intel released their Pentium 200 MMX CPU for about $500. Going back to the S3 ViRGE video cards, they were a very good 2D performers, and on top of that, there was some support for 3D rendering using a Direct3D API from Microsoft. This is a Test Drive 5 running on an S3 ViRGE card using Direct3D. It works. Anyway, Quake 2 didn't support Direct3D at all, so S3 came with an idea to create a wrapper to translate OpenGL calls into Direct3D calls, but the end result was rather unplayable. So the only viable option to play Quake 2 was software rendering. Even with a very respectable CPU for 1997, like a Pentium 200 MMX, with software rendering, the only playable resolution in Quake 2 was 320 by 240, where we get about 17 FPS with this S3 video card. This is actually how I played the game when it came out. And now let's switch to a very interesting 997 2D video card, 3D accelerator, and MPact 2 hardware decoder. We are talking about almost unknown chromatic research MPact 2 card. This card hit the shelves in late 1997, but it had a rather limited distribution. And what can I say? This all-in-one card was about $200, and it was a way better 3D performer than a S3 ViRGE card that was about $150. With an MPact 2 card at 640 by 480, we get about 13 frames per second, which is not that terrible considering that a Voodoo one will render only 20 frames. We can get also 20 frames running the game at 400 by 300, and we can get even more FPS by further degrading the image quality. And when I say degrading, it means that things can get really ugly. Just take a look, we can barely understand the text on the screen. The legendary Voodoo 1 was released in late 1996, but in 1997 an enhanced version using 2 TMUs was also available. Quantum 3D, a spin-off from 3D offered such enhanced cards. A second TMU, which stands for Texturing Mapping Unit, would offer about 30% more FPS, and indeed we get about 26 frames when running Quake II on a Voodoo one with 2 TMUs. We are still using a CPU released in 1997, the Pentium 200 MMX mentioned earlier. Otherwise, we could get a few more FPS with a faster CPU. While a Voodoo one was reasonable priced at $300, this special Quantum 3D cards with more TMUs and memory were quite pricey back in 1997 and didn't make any sense to buy them for gaming. And speaking of expensive cards, here is an Intergraph RealiZm II graphics accelerator, also released in 1997. Generally, you had to buy a workstation to get your hands on one of these cards. They were not sold separately. So, were they any good for gaming? Well, definitely you could enjoy Quake II on one of these huge cards. The image quality was good, and they were able to handle 32-bit color depth, unlike 3DFX Voodoo cards. Anyway, a dollar per FPS ratio was extremely bad. This card was tested on a newer CPU, a 2002 Northwood Pentium 4, but looking at an AnandTech Quake II benchmark from December 1997, we can find another intense 3D realism card that scored about 20 FPS on a Pentium 2 300, which was the best desktop CPU at the time. So the bottom line is that back in 1997, very expensive professional OpenGL cards weren't meant for gaming. Anyway, these expensive OpenGL cards were used during the Quake II development. John Carmack from id Software had an Intergraph RealiZm card, but it was too big to fit in its portable PC, so instead he used another very expensive but single-slot OpenGL card with an Evans and Sutherland chip. It happens to have this card too in my collection, so let's see how well it can handle Quake II. I have tested this AccelGraphics Eclipse card on older configurations like a Pentium 2 350, but also on much newer motherboards. And it looks like the CPU speed doesn't have a great impact on the frame rate. Anyway, we get about 30 frames per second while using 32-bit color depth. And so far, this is the best card from this lot. So, if spending about $3,000 on a video card wasn't a problem, was this the best card to play Quake II in December 1997, considering that Voodoo 2 wasn't launched yet? Well, I guess not. The product of the year in 1997 was NVIDIA RIVA 128, which was able to render about 35 frames per second while charging you about $250 for this job. I would have used my own RIVA card in these benchmarks, but I simply can't find it right now. I know I have one, so stay tuned for the next video. Thanks for watching. Maybe consider hitting that subscribe button to help me get a round number. Thank you.